My name is Sam Sauter. I run a digital marketing agency with my partners. We've done $1.4 million in cash collected in the trailing 12 months. We manage hundreds of thousands of dollars per month profitably across all the major paid advertising channels. That is LinkedIn, Meta, PPC, YouTube. I've had the privilege now at this point in my career to work with some of the largest personal brands, coaches, and consultants in the entire world. I've worked with billion-dollar fund managers. I've worked with software companies that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars. I've been very fortunate at this point in my career that I feel like I've worked with some of the biggest category kings and some of the biggest leaders in their respective spaces across 25 different industries. And we've continued to write winning campaign after winning campaign after winning campaign, and our hit rate has continued to go higher and higher and higher as I've grown in my experience and grown throughout my career. So without further ado, let's actually show you the advertisement account. Now for this particular client, they were actually raising money to fuel and fund their internal business operations. They were issuing debt to fuel their R&D and their existing operations. They've already raised $150 million up to this point, and they wanted to work with me to start scaling outside of their warm network and start advertising on cold traffic for LinkedIn, Meta, and Google. With any type of lead generation campaigns, we're typically judging our success based on the cost of capital. How much money did we invest into paid advertising spend, and how much money was raised relative to that amount? Now, what we found in the registered investment advisory space, working with tons of financial advisors, was that we could raise money from anywhere between a 0.5% cost of capital to a 1% cost of capital. That would mean that for every $5,000 to $10,000 invested, we would add an additional $1 million of assets to the business owner. Now, typically, most financial advisors are going to charge somewhere between 0.5% and 1% per year, which would mean they effectively break even for that entire year. However, their business as a whole, their enterprise value would typically be valued at 5 to 7 times the annual recurring revenue of that book and of that advisor's book of business, or the net profits of that business. We had some clients that were valued at 20 times their existing cash flow. So they were more than happy to pay 1 year of cash flow to have a customer that was on average going to stay sometimes 5, 10, 15 years. And by the way, the assets are going to compound every single year in addition to their fees. But they were also building tremendous enterprise value year over year. Now, financial advisors were typically wanting to take a large portion or sometimes all of somebody's investable assets to manage across a diversified portfolio. But we also worked with fund managers that would have one particular fund offering that would sometimes offer a place of 10 to 15% of some investors' overall portfolio. Those investors would see much higher close rates on their consultations because they weren't asking for such a high trust sale, something like in the financial advisory space where they were asking for the bulk majority of somebody's assets. That was a very difficult high trust sale that sometimes extended the sales cycle from 2, 3, 4, even sometimes 6 or 12 months to get that conversion event. The fund managers that we worked with had much shorter sales cycles, but on average had a much smaller check size for the amount of money that they were raising. And those types of offers had inherent scarcity and urgency, which is a very, very important psychological tactic that allows you to convert a higher percentage of your prospects. Now, financial advisors conversely didn't have the ability to leverage some of that scarcity and urgency that those fund managers had because they were typically recommending more regular, more ordinary investments like stocks, bond portfolios that had unlimited capacity, and there was typically no urgency to enter into the market, particularly during the last 15 years. Now I'm recording this in 2025. We're coming off of an unprecedented bull run. We typically see people aren't switching from their financial advisors during bull run years. They're typically much more interested in switching during times of challenge, hardship, or recessions. Now, going back to this client, this was a client who came to us after their prior agency had invested $300,000 into paid advertising spend to raise a measly $20,000. It was an absolute disaster. Now, if you're hiring an agency or considering working with an agency, the first piece of advice that I would encourage you to take is that you can test shallowly. The beautiful thing about paid advertising that I love so much, and it's how I got started in my career, is that all of online advertising is a very asymmetric bet, meaning the downside is very, very low and relative to the possible upside. You see about 80% of all the advertising campaigns that I've launched for my career. I've lost hundreds of advertising campaigns over the course of my career in 25 different industries, millions of dollars in spend managed profitably. About 20% of my initial campaigns out of the gate are not profitable. I'm very honest and upfront about that. But here's the beautiful thing about that. Those campaigns that failed were cut almost immediately. In my winning campaigns, the ads that I have crafted with my team, we have an in-house videography team. We have 4 creative spokespeople that produce hundreds of advertisements for our clients. Okay, we have video editors, everything in-house. Those video assets that we create for our clients will sometimes run for years and years and years on end and consistently produce qualified leads, qualified meetings, and customers. Meaning the losers were cut very quickly and the winners, we kept spending more and more money and let them run for years and years on end. Now, one of my biggest mentors in my entire career has been Russell Brunson. Brunson, I personally consider him to be one of the biggest, best marketers in the planet. Russell, to this day, somebody who was, I don't know if he currently is, a billionaire, still tests advertising campaigns as if he was a day one bootstrap founder, meaning he's only testing with about $1,000 in paid advertising spend. Think about how incredible that is. The advertising platforms, the advertising channels today in 2025 are so sophisticated that a measly $1,000 to $2,000, $3,000 in paid advertising spend is enough data to validate whether that campaign is going to be profitable. So for this agency to spend $300,000 telling this business owner that they continue to need to test and test and test more in order to get a result is completely ridiculous. Like I said, about 20% of the campaigns that we launch are not profitable. However, within the first $1,000 to spend, we are making sharp pivots very quickly, very radically in order to achieve our target KPI. And there has never been an instance where we've continued to invest in one particular campaign, funnel, or advertising strategy or campaign for $300,000 where the metrics are nowhere even near within KPI. Like I said, our average KPI that we're seeing across the industry, very realistic to achieve a 0.5% to a 1% cost of capital. This was an instance where the amount of advertising spend actually exceeded the amount of total money that was being raised. We find that the clients that have been burned the worst are typically working with some of those larger, bigger, established agencies because there's a series of layers of management and you're sometimes working with a very junior account representative who has a fraction of the required experience needed to be successful from a paid advertising standpoint. Now, what made this even crazier is that this agency that they had worked with prior to coming to us had made one of the most obvious, simple, and ridiculous mistakes in all of internet marketing is they used the wrong funnel. Their sales process was completely broken. What do I mean by that? In internet marketing, there's typically 3 funnels. There's low ticket funnels. These are funnels where it's small enough of an impulse purchase that somebody can directly transact on the site without needing to speak to a human being. Then you have in between that, you have something that is called mid-ticket funnels. These are typically products or services that are priced at the range of between $1,000 and $3,000. The reason that it typically falls under this price point, now there's exceptions to these rules, obviously. These aren't perfect lines. But as a general rule of thumb, if you're selling between that $1,000 and $3,000 price range, that is not a purchase that is large enough to where if a salesperson is working for an hour speaking to somebody over the phone, that they're going to be able to make a meaningful living selling at that smaller price point. It takes roughly the same amount of time to close a $10,000 deal as it does $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 deal. And if you're selling at that price point as a salesman, no qualified salesman or successful salesman would want to sell a product that is priced that low. Very, very difficult for them on a dollars per hour range to make any meaningful amount of money. So typically, if you're selling at that price point, what you do is these are called presentation funnels, where you're running ads to something like a webinar or a live workshop or a virtual event of some sorts, and you're doing a mass pitch to a room full of qualified prospects to sell your product or service. Now, typically, and again, this is not perfect, there's exceptions. If you're selling something in excess of $3,000, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $100,000, we have clients that are selling products and services that are worth more than $1 million lifetime contract. Those sales are done over a sales call. That is something that is a very high purchase. There's high stakes, there's high risk involved. So of course they're going to want to speak to somebody before they make that decision. Now, what was so ludicrous about this agency is they thought that selling an investment, perhaps one of the highest ticket, highest trust sales that could occur, to a stranger on the internet that already inherently does not trust you, that they should be running ads directly to a sales page, asking them their social security number and for them to contribute money with the minimum investment being $5,000 without ever speaking to somebody. In fact, the only thing that was really on that page was a 5-minute video explaining their fund offering and their page. It was completely ridiculous. And I was shocked that they had managed, after $300,000 in paid advertising spend, to still raise $30,000, $40,000. I was blown away by that. I would have thought that it would have been zero. Human beings are not making purchases of that magnitude with so little amount of information and so little contact with a human being. So he had a high ticket, high trust offering, but he was treating these customers, he was treating them in a funnel process that was akin to somebody who was selling an e-commerce product for $20 or $40. It was absolutely ludicrous and was burning money. And I had to go in front of the entire board, 10, 15 people, and tell them that this was the most ludicrous, most misleading, one of the most hideously and poorly managed campaigns that I'd ever seen in the entire course of my career. We were hired the following month, and we achieved a 16x return on paid advertising spend, meaning the amount of money that was raised relative to what we spent on paid advertising spend was 16 times greater. Now, we made many changes, including the advertisement that we're going to show you here shortly, targeting of who we were were selecting to show those advertisements to, as well as the pages that we were sending them to. We redesigned the landing page, the funnel, etc. But the biggest change was we flipped the type of funnel that we're using from something that was a low ticket funnel to now they were running calls in order to book a call with the qualified prospect. Now, if you're listening to this might be the biggest obvious thing ever, but you'll still find businesses that do not follow this strategy, that are operating under these ridiculous assumptions that somebody is going to know, like, and trust and fully understand their offering at the depth and the nuance that they understand their own product or service. So just remember that as a general rule of thumb. If you're selling something for sub $200, $300, $400, they don't need to speak to a human being. In fact, it's insulting and it's a bit of a waste of time if they have to speak to a human being in order to make a purchase. If you're somebody who's selling at that $1,000 to $3,000 price point, then it might be best for you to run a webinar. If you believe that your product or service is somewhat unanimous, irregardless of the prospect, then a webinar might be the right funnel for you. Now, if you're selling something that is high ticket or very custom, then you absolutely want to be driving marketing's main KPI is not necessarily revenue, not necessarily sales, but the first and most important thing is how many qualified opportunities are we getting in front of the sales team? Once you start having qualified prospects who are the right avatar, the right ICP sitting in front of your salesperson in the KPI that you have established with your agency, that is no longer a marketing constraint, that's a sales constraint. Now, when we were working with financial advisors to help them raise money, well, it wouldn't make sense to send them to a webinar. We would send them to a sales call funnel where they could have a one-on-one consultation with the financial advisor. Why is that? Well, because everybody's financial situation is a little bit different. Everybody has money in different accounts. Some people have a lot of money in their 401k, their Roth IRA. Some people have different income expectations. Some people have a portfolio that's completely mismanaged. It would be ridiculous to create one unified webinar pitch when you have 20 different prospects that are in 20 different buying windows. Now, let's say you were selling a course on how to make money through a particular business opportunity. We have a lot of clients there in the biz op space. And what we find is very, very effective is running ads to a webinar where we explain to people this new business opportunity that is somewhat unanimous. The pitch it's pretty much same regardless of the person that we're selling to. That is something where a webinar could make sense for your particular business because we're going to construct one pitch that fits for all these different types of buying windows. So you have to ask yourself, is my product or service hyper-personalized, high ticket? Then it obviously makes sense to run a sales call funnel. If it's something that can be unified, crystallized, and consolidated into one specific sales pitch, you would run that webinar. And if it's a very, very low price, then you can just run a simple direct to checkout on your website. Now, the next thing that we did for this client was we implemented a lead nurture strategy. If you're not familiar with internet marketing, you have lead generation, creating opportunities, creating inquiries where people submit their contact information requesting a callback for your product or service. You then have lead conversion, which is your ability to convert those opportunities into customers. You have lead retention, which is keeping those customers happy, delivering on the promises that you gave in your marketing. But then there's a step in between lead generation and lead conversion, which we refer to in internet marketing as lead nurture, nurturing the opportunity, keeping the opportunity live, engaged, and warm over time. After somebody opts in and books a phone call, our job is not done there as marketers. In order to create a sales process where we are able to convert a total stranger who's never heard of our company to then invest multiple millions of dollars into our product or service or a fund offering or to fuel our business operations, it's not going to happen over one phone call. It's going to sometimes require multiple phone calls, and it's also going to require an excessive amount of content consumption. And that could be either written or even better, that could be in video like you're watching now. To work with our digital marketing agency, we have some clients that are paying between $10,000, $20,000, and $30,000 per month to work with us. We have some clients that are paying as little as $3,000 to $4,000 per month. It depends on the scope and the level in which we are involved in the business. People are not typically going to get on a phone call that is 35 minutes, that is a cold traffic that just met me from an ad, and invest $15,000 per month into my agency services if they have not consumed hours and hours of content like you're watching right now. The purpose of this YouTube channel for me is not necessarily new lead generation. In fact, most of my business comes through word of mouth, referrals, and etc., and other clients that we've worked with in the past referring business to our agency. But even then, when they are being brought to us, there's still a bit of trust there that a cold traffic buyer from a digital marketing campaign will not have. Having this digital marketing portfolio, this YouTube channel that I have, it gives them the ability to see my digital portfolio. They can watch 4, 5, 6 videos. Now, if somebody's able to consume 4, 5, 6 pieces of my YouTube content, they will very consistently sign the contract for what is a multiple six-figure per year engagement to work with my agency. So after we generate the lead on these advertising campaigns, we are sending very value-dense educational content via email. We're sending it via SMS. We have a phone setter team that reaches out to these prospects, an SDR team. They provide tailored information. But if you want to become even more advanced than that, what you can do is you can take those emails that opt in. You can add these emails, add these specific individuals into a custom audience on these advertising platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, Meta, or YouTube, and you can specifically run advertisement engagement campaigns that target these individuals with your long form content so that they are forced to consume that content that will greatly aid your sales process. Your sales team will get very, very frustrated if they're continuously starting conversations with prospects where the first thing the prospect says is, "Who are you guys? What do you do?" Especially if they are accustomed to dealing with prospects that are coming from a referral, coming from an organic source where the prospect has more warmth and education. Now, with some of our largest clients, they're spending several $1,000s per day, booking hundreds of calls per day. It's actually not too terribly expensive when you're dealing with an audience that could be, let's say, the trailing last 30 days of all the people who have booked calls. Let's just say that historically you've noticed your sales cycle is 30 days. These people here, they're in the hot buying window. 30 days after we book a call is typically what we consider the hot window. And we want to cook these people as much as we can with as much content as humanly possible. So what we're typically doing is we set up an automation that when somebody opts in, they get added to the retargeting campaigns, and then 30 days later, they get removed from that marketing campaign. And what we have is a hyper-specific, hyper-concentrated group of people that for the last trailing days have indicated an insane amount of interest, have booked a call with us. They're in market. They're shopping for this product or service. And we are on average serving them in their newsfeed 27 pieces of long-form organic content. Now, that is a big deal. What would your close rate be if you knew that somebody on average watched 27 pieces of content before getting on the phone with you? In order to add these lead nurture campaigns, our total cost of advertising is only increasing by about 10 or 15%. However, if our close rate increases by more than 10%, then we know that this lead nurture strategy was accretive to the business owner. And sometimes we find the lead nurture campaigns is not accretive, meaning the conversion rate did not increase in excess of what we are paying to nurture and further cook those leads more. And other times we find it's very accretive and very necessary, and the business owner struggles to get those conversion events to happen if there's not that additional consumption happening there. Now I'm going to quickly flash to my screen here and show you the advertisement that we were leveraging. So follow me on my screen here. I'm going to quickly show you the ad that we were running.
Accredited tech and angel investors, everyone's talking about AI, but the next trillion-dollar opportunity is the Internet of Things. Most buildings, factories, and cities still run blind, no real-time data on air quality, power use, heating, or equipment health. That wastes money, shortens equipment life, and burns billions every year. The Internet of Things, IoT, fixes that. It connects machines, buildings, and cities so they can share data and make smarter decisions automatically. Is building the network that makes it all work. We own our own licensed spectrum, the same kind used by major telecoms, to securely connect sensors that track energy use and air quality across long distances. We've already raised $150 million, partnered with Crayola and Revert Technologies, and we own $100 million in licensed spectrum assets, giving us a real competitive advantage. According to McKinsey, the global IoT market is expected to surpass $12.5 trillion in total value by 2030. And IotaCom's patented technology and exclusive FCC licensed spectrum give us nationwide rights to operate in frequencies that few, if any, competitors can access.
So why, in our opinion, was this ad so successful? Well, number one is we're capturing that demand and that awareness and that mass market sentiment around AI, and we are channeling it into a contrarian new opportunity. These are copywriting best practices. Typically that new opportunity, something that they haven't seen before, haven't thought of before, which is this growing Internet of Things marketplace when it is being juxtaposed and contrasted with the AI revolution, and that is creating a tremendous amount of curiosity and opportunity that is driving a tremendous amount of submission. The other thing that we did is we called out our target ICP and avatar. Now, when you are scaling your paid advertising campaigns, you have to write messaging and copy and targeting that appeals to a broader demographic. But when you are starting paid advertising, it's very difficult. You're going from 0 to 1. 0 to 1 is more difficult than 1 to 10, okay? It is literally harder to go from 0 to $1,000 a day profitably in paid advertising spend than it is to go from $1 to $10,000 per day in paid advertising spend, okay? Now, in order to overcome that challenge that occurs from 0 to 1, start with the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest possible avatar to target, and then take those profits to reinvest into a more scalable but lower probability bet. So what does that mean in the instance of capital raising? Because somebody's past behavior is the best predictor of their future behavior, this also applies in the investment industry. Typically, somebody's prior investment preferences, whether it be real estate, venture capital, private equity, those investment preferences will dictate how they allocate money in the future. Our marketing, our messaging, our targeting was all clearly calling out this low-hanging fruit of tech and angel investors, people that were already predisposed to making an investment in a company like this that was early stage, that was not profitable, that was seeking very high upside and also very high risk at the same time. So the two reasons that this advertisement was successful is, number one, we created a tremendous amount of curiosity. We highlighted the fact that this industry was growing tremendously. This Internet of Things movement was growing tremendously, which was backed up by a very credible McKinsey study showcasing this new, unique opportunity that they have never heard before that creates a tremendous amount of curiosity and drove a tremendous amount of submissions, coupled with the fact that we were laser targeting an ICP that was our perfect fit to work with us. Not closely related, not sort of interested, but somebody that was already actively and exposed to angel investments with both high risk and high potential upside. That is what made this campaign profitable. And when we look at the unit economics and the downstream conversion metrics of this particular campaign, we saw that we were producing leads for an on average of $50. We were scheduling those meetings with accredited investors. We were on average scheduling 30% of those leads into meetings, which gave our client, on average, they were paying $200 to speak with a prospect for an opportunity at a multiple six-figure investment check. That discrepancy of the $200 cost to get in front of that person relative to what that customer was worth to them, multiple six figures to fuel their business operations, is what allowed them to achieve that 16x return on paid advertising spend. And roughly the economics were such that it was approximately a 10 or 15% close rate. It cost us approximately $1,500 to acquire a customer that was on average writing a check for multiple five figures. After the lead was generated, I worked with the business owner to implement an SDR, a business development associate, to very quickly call, email, and text these prospects, send tailored outreach to the prospect. We inserted a power dialer that allowed that SDR to greatly enhance and aid in their workflows so that they could wake up in the morning, click play, and make hundreds of phone calls towards new inquiries that were showing up on their website in a very efficient manner where they didn't have to think, manage, or upkeep, or do a lot of admin inside of the CRM. We then worked with them to set up HubSpot, email notifications, autoresponders that occurred after that contact opted in, so they received very, very valuable, dense emails, nurtures, in addition to those engagement and retargeting campaigns that we were running, which effectively caused this prospect to feel like we were omnipresent. We were following them around the internet for months and months on end. That is effectively what we call the surround sound effect, meaning no matter where I go, always seeing your face. I'm always seeing your product or service. Even if we have a small budget, because the audience is so small, we're only targeting those people that are in that hot buying window, all the people that have booked calls over the trailing 30 days. We're able to absolutely bombard these people with dozens of pieces of a unique and value-dense content. All that consumption is going to drive more conversions. All the consumption is going to lubricate that sales cycle and make it feel like when you're on the first call, it's really the fourth or the fifth call. And then the last reason I think this campaign was so successful, is I don't want to take full credit for it, is that we selected clients that already had product market fit. This company had raised $150 million up to this point. They clearly had product market fit. They created an even more irresistible offer for this new cold traffic offer, where investors got a very attractive interest rate, where they were senior in the capital stack, but also had the opportunity to flip that and convert that into equity at a very discounted share price. And that just made the offer even more cold friendly, because the challenge that you're having is you're losing all the trust that the investor relations department was accustomed to getting with these warm referrals. So that is everything that I have for you guys today. Again, my name is Sam Sauter. I run paidscaling.com. If you're interested in working with me, maybe you're interested in raising money for your own business, or maybe you're interested in acquiring new customers online through digital marketing and online advertising. Now, if you're doing more than $100,000 per month in revenue, you may be a great fit for my Done For You agency, where I work directly for you. Myself and my small team will work with you to craft your campaigns completely done for you, to create a system and an ongoing campaign that's going to regularly and repeatably attract your dream customer and your dream clients on a consistent basis. If you are doing less than $100,000 per month, I have consulting done with you options where you can still have access to me, you can still have access to my team, but we're just going to be working with you in a little bit more of a hands-off manner, and you're going to be in charge of all the excessive implementation. We are going to be there as a guide to help you hit that $100,000 per month, so that we can then hopefully work with you thereafter and become a full-on agency client where we take over from there. If you found this video valuable, I'd really appreciate if you could like, comment, and share below. If you do that, you'll be entered in the chance to win a year-long one-on-one consulting engagement with myself and the rest of my team. That is something that we're going to charge typically tens of thousands of dollars for to do that. We're going to be giving away a few spots to specifically people who like, comment, and share this content to somebody who you think would really need it and would benefit from it in their own business. So again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Click the link below, go to my website, fill out an application. We'll learn a little bit more about your business, and my team will be in touch to see if you can help. Thanks so much for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.